Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 13, Episode 27. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Glad you guys are back with us here for this Wednesday show. Dave, how you doing? I am battling the fellow Pittsburgh battle of should I turn my heat on? How long can I hold off before switching that thing on? It was 60 degrees this morning in my house, so I think I'm about to lose that fight.
I tell you, it's still in the weather has turned out here in Vegas, but it's still 90 at certain points of the day there. And I like to keep it at about 71 to 73 in here. And I freeze my wife out. So I bet she is kind of maybe looking forward to the cooler weather coming a little bit more. That way the AC gets shut off for a little while, because there's the upstairs, even at times you can probably hang some meat up here, and if it's cold upstairs, it's probably even colder downstairs for her. But I will not blink in the face of adversity here.
True Mike Tomlin fashion. You are ready to play this Sunday against the New York Jets.
My back's feeling better for everybody
Good.
that's listening. So I'm not out of the woods yet, but man, if it was a 10 a few weeks or several days ago, it's probably about a 3 or a 4 now. I feel like I'm not ready to go out and run any marathons or anything like that. But oh man, it's been a long 8 weeks.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. Also want to just mention, hopefully everyone, any of our Florida listeners, hopefully staying safe. Pretty nasty hurricane Ian barreling down on Florida's west coast.
Yeah, we got Alexa down there in that. So stay safe, Alexa. And having spent most of my life in Florida in the Panhandle there, I know exactly what they're going through, and that's why I got the hell out of there.
Yeah, my mom went through Andrew in 92, and that was the last of that. We moved after that. So,
yeah, I don't envy them, and there's going to unfortunately be a lot of destruction and life loss and all like that. So, just thoughts and prayers to everybody listening down in that area.
Definitely. Not my best segue in the world, but I do want to mention a little bit later in the show, we have Andy Vasquez from New Jersey Advanced Media, Star Ledger, and NJ.com to talk about the New York Jets. So we'll talk to Andy a little bit later in the show. You can follow him on Twitter at Andy Vasquez. All right, Dave, Mike Tomlin holding his annual and weekly Tuesday press conference on Tuesday, of course. And from an injury report standpoint, a couple more names added to the list than what we thought. Coming out of the Browns game, of course, Ahkello Witherspoon with the hamstring injury, but 3 other injuries to note in Minkah Fitzpatrick going through concussion protocol, Kevin Dotson with an ankle, and punter Presley Harvin with a hip injury that had this team sign old friend Jordan Berry to the practice squad yesterday as insurance if Harvin cannot go this weekend against the Jets. So, of course, Fitzpatrick, the biggest name here. We'll have to just see what the protocol takes him. Hopefully he can be cleared by Sunday. We'll just have to wait and see. And, of course, watching Harvin pretty closely as well.
Yeah, a little bit of a surprise there with both, really, all the guys that not named Ahkello Witherspoon that Mike Tomlin rattled off there. I guess the good news when it comes to Minkah Fitzpatrick is the gap in time between games here. And we'll see what the injury report on Wednesday says. And, hopefully he can come out of concussion protocol with time to spare before the game on Sunday there. The Presley Harvin thing came out of nowhere. A little bit surprised to see the news pop up early yesterday morning on Tuesday that Jordan Berry was being signed back to the practice squad there. So maybe we'll be able to figure it, get some more blues clues, if you will, when the injury report drops later this afternoon on Wednesday there. But it does kind of sound like, and Saturday, obviously, if Harvin ends up being questionable or ruled out, Saturday would be the day, obviously, when Jordan Berry would be elevated to the inactive roster there as well. So going to be an interesting week to monitor the injury report for sure.
And should mention, as the team signed Berry yesterday, they released outside linebacker Delonte Scott, which should mean that David Anini is going to be ready to go as his team's number 4 outside linebacker after being signed off the Titans practice squad about 2 weeks ago. I know to some people, Scott was a mild surprise, somebody that was elevated to the roster each of the last 2 weeks, but with Anini ready to go and Scott not playing all that particularly well, I was not terribly shocked by that move.
Yeah, they did have the other, who's it, Anderson on the outside?
Ryan Anderson. Yes.
Yeah, Ryan Anderson on the practice squad. So I was a little bit surprised because Scott had been elevated a couple of times there, but and I don't know how, because TJ Watt obviously is not practicing yet. At least we don't think he is. I suppose this is the 3rd week though, right? So he could technically return. If cleared, he could technically, I think, return to practice this week. Okay. He just can't play. But I don't know if that's any way related. I think it's more of a sign, like you said, that David Anini is probably up to speed, and they still have the other outside linebacker and Anderson on the practice squad there. So. Or maybe they thought they were going to be able to get Derek Tuska back off of waivers. I don't know. And obviously he didn't clear waivers, goes out to got claimed by the Chargers there as well too. So I was a bit surprised that Scott was released, to be honest with you.
Not that it matters much, but I think Pittsburgh was ahead of the Chargers in the waiver claim order, I believe. And so I think that means they obviously did not put a claim on Tuska.
Good point. Good point.
I think it also probably means that Anderson himself is ready and up to speed because he was a relatively new signing and a veteran guy, and with a couple weeks under his belt in Pittsburgh system, probably means that he could be ready if this team has to call somebody up. But that's the injury report standpoint. So it seems like Witherspoon is the most likely name to miss. Obviously, Fitzpatrick's a bit more up in the air just given the nature of the concussion protocol. If Witherspoon cannot go, then you would see Cam Sutton, Levi Wallace as your 2 outside corners. Sutton would stay outside in sub-package, I assume, and you would see more of either Trey Norwood and or Arthur Millette playing in the slot.
You would be correct, sir. And a little shake-up on the depth chart yesterday, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's not the change people wanted. People were hoping for the whole, Kenny Pickett to first string be named the starter, but it's nose tackle. Tyson Alualu being demoted to second string nose tackle. Montravius Adams now listed as the starting nose tackle. Mike Tomlin asked about that in the press conference and said that, frankly, Montravius Adams had simply outplayed Tyson Alualu. So Pittsburgh's run defense wilting each of the last 2 weeks. For my money, I felt like Alualu has not been the same guy. I didn't feel like his tape was terrible, but he wasn't getting off of blocks and making impact plays and dominating centers the way that he did prior to his injury. So 35 years old, want to manage his snap count. Adams is more explosive, younger, fresher legs, obviously. So an understandable and probably the right move for this team to make.
Hey, props to Mike Tomlin for just coming flat out, right out and saying it, right? Right. He's been playing better than Tyson Alualu, so we just thought that was appropriate there. After going through the defensive tape and, a couple times already on the All-22, and after that news came out last night, I went back through it again, and it wasn't so much that Tyson Alualu has played horrible. It's just he's not getting anything done, and there was a couple of times he was on the ground in there, a couple of times he's getting turned, I thought, out of the hole. And, one of the things coming, the 2020 Tyson Alualu was a lot more quicker, disruptive when it came to pass rush in particular. And you see him get stalemated. Now there was a couple of times having to handle a couple double teams in there, but overall, I mean, he's just not popping off of the tape. And it wasn't that Montravius Adams extremely popped off the tape, but I thought Montravius did a better job of staying on his feet and some of those outside zones, being in position in those and chasing the football a lot better. And, Didn't he get his hand up one time and got a pass knocked down in that game against the Browns as well too? So when going back through and watching the snaps Tuesday night, it was more that Tyson Alualu is just not showing up on tape as much as Montravius Adams, I think.
And of all the places for this team to make a change, that seems the most logical. Alualu's 35, and the last year of his career is unfortunately, he used to be such a durable guy. And he's been healthy and available all this year, but I think just all the leg and knee injuries, ankle stuff he's dealt with have caught up to him in father time as well. So is that going to magically transform this team's run defense? No, probably not, but it probably is the right move for whatever it's worth. And sample sizes are small, and these stats lack context to a degree, but when on the field, Alualu in the Steelers defense is allowing 5.0 yards per carry. When Adams is out there, it's 2.6. So there's probably a lot of noise in that stat, but just to kind of give a statistical element to it, Adams has been pretty productive. At least this run defense has been productive whenever he's on the field.
When going back through, did you see anything, especially on a couple of those busted runs that they busted? Did you see anything blatant when it came to Alualu on those? I didn't. I mean,
nothing.
A couple of times he got turned out, but I didn't see anything super egregious when it came, especially to the run and Alualu specifically.
No, nothing egregious, but was there anything stand out either? Anything good, anything? And that was kind of the thing. It was very average was the way that I would use it, where he wasn't getting washed and wasn't, looking awful, but he wasn't making splash plays. I remember back in, I think 2020, before he got hurt, he had a couple games where he was just dominating centers. The Giants center week one just schooled that guy, and you don't see that play anymore. So understandably, this team's making a change.
Look, and if you're a Steelers fan, obviously you listen to this, and Montravius Adams signed a 2-year deal during the offseason here. The hope really should be that, okay, Montravius is settled into this defense now. We start seeing some really good football out of him, because it would be nice for this team not to have to go into the draft with, defensive tackle, nose tackle being up there, even though I don't think you should take one in the first or second round, but hopefully you come out of this where maybe you can spend, I don't know, a 5th or 6th round draft pick or something on a nose tackle. So hopefully Montravius can excel in these, now that he's first string here in these remaining, obviously the remainder of the season, and show that, hey, I can be the starting nose tackle for this team at least in 2023.
Right, that's going to be the hope. And there's talent. I think Adams is a pretty talented guy. He's got a pretty explosive first step and big lower half. And just hopefully this team can find some stability in its run defense, because the way they've been getting grinded down, and certainly the offensive lack of being able to sustain their drives has hurt the defense, but the defense has to make stops as well. In the second half of both these games, the Patriots and the Browns game, the run defense is really falling apart. So we'll see what Adams can do, and hopefully he can provide a little bit more splash.
It's a good week to try to repair all this stuff too, with banged up. We'll talk to Andy obviously later in the show here, but a Jets offense is trying to find their way. Going to have potentially a quarterback back up under center that hasn't played at all this year, and very little in the preseason, and missing a starting left tackle there, and the run blocking hasn't been all that great. So if there's a good week to get those gaps filled and get off blocks and do a good job against the run, this is a prime get healthy week, if you will.
And there aren't too many of those after this game. After that, you get the real gauntlet of Buffalo and Tampa Bay, although they're not playing all that well right now, but then Miami, Philadelphia. So this is certainly, as you said, hopefully a get-right game, but the Jets are saying the same thing, saying they got to get back on track as well. So Mike Tomlin, what else did he have to say? Talked about how he's not surprised. Something positive here, Dave. Alex Highsmith, the NFL sack leader through 3 weeks with 4.5. And so Mike Tomlin saying he's not surprised by what Highsmith has done, and just said it was a testament to his work ethic and dedication, and called it football justice to see the production follow the work that Highsmith has put in.
How about 3 more on Sunday, Alex? Going against Connor McDermott over there at left tackle. It sounds like it's going to be the plan there. And you watched the 20-something snaps that Connor McDermott played when he came in for relief from for George Fant over there at left tackle. Not great, Bob, as we like to say. And is there anybody? I mean, obviously we don't have the time to watch all 22 across the NFL every week here, but with that spin move that Alex Highsmith has now, I mean, he's pretty much damn near perfected that thing at this point. And is that one of the best edge spin moves in the NFL right now?
Yeah, I don't know who else really does it at a high level. I'm sure there are other people, and obviously we're not pretending like it's Dwight Freeney level, but it's super effective, and especially against Jedrick Wills. He's been using that move on Wills since 2020, that second matchup back then, his rookie season, and he just burned him on it again and again and again. And it's not about it's partially the move. It's also partially the setup. I went back through the tape. He did not use that spin move the entire game until that crucial moment late, third down. Defense has to get a stop. He'd been just using speed rushes and bull rushes the entire game, dropping the coverage too much as well. That was, I think, a mistake, dropping into coverage 35% of the time when your pass rushes.
That's Lamar Woodley territory.
Right. Yeah. I mean, some of that's schematic because of the empty sets, but still not a good idea overall. But anyway, and so timing that move and using it, not wasting it on 1st and 10 back in the second quarter, using it in a really prime moment, that's partially what makes the move so effective, because there's a surprise element to haven't used it the entire game. Now I'm going to use it late in this big time moment. And so there's a pass rush plan and football IQ component along with the actual execution of the move, which Highsmith has really gotten down to a science.
Yeah, look, and you know, he's going to probably get some attention from some chipping backs and tight ends in this game. Going to have to be aware of that. But I mean, this is a good matchup for Alex Highsmith, even without TJ Watt on the field. There's a good one for Cam Hayward too, quite honestly. Laken Tomlinson, I think he's a former undrafted free agent.
He's a good guy. He's got size. I like Tomlinson. He's had good success in San Francisco, but you know, Hayward hopefully can make some more noise.
Right. So should see, and you know, we just talked about Montravius Adams going to be in there in base against Connor McGovern, another undrafted free agent as well too. So if they could get anything out of their left outside linebacker. And quite honestly, Max Mitchell might be their best remaining offensive lineman at this point here. So I would expect the Jets to kind of give the attention to Highsmith and Hayward over there on that one side, and it'd be nice to get Malik Reed to announce his presence with authority, if you will, on Sunday against Max Mitchell at right tackle.
Definitely, this pass rush has to provide more than what they have so far. What did you think about Tomlin's comments about the offense, saying they've been better with every outing, has seen continued progress? What were your thoughts on that?
I'd like to get the tape that he's looking at.
Me too.
Here's the thing. The 3 and outs. I mean, look, you look at the third down, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit here. You can't go 1 for 9 on third downs, especially some of the down and distances that they had. But pound for pound and overall and 30,000 look at the offense, it was slightly better. I mean, it might have been the best. And like we always try to joke, you know, it's like getting a Ritz cracker instead of a salty. Maybe not quite a Ritz. Maybe it's one of those great value knockoff Ritz crackers, if you will. But I mean, as we said coming out of that game, man, if you can't continually go every week. Well, if that kind of thing there, but you know, the Jaylen Warren play was smartly called at the right time. For some reason, they can't pull this off without getting an eligible man downfield. But I mean, you're talking about a huge game-turning play that obviously got wiped out by a penalty. The pass down the left side to Deontay Johnson that went right through his hands there. By no means is this saying get your paint and your poster boards out and save Matt Canada type situation here and save Mitch Trubisky. But from from a small sample size of 3 weeks into the season, it was probably the best, I think, top to bottom overall offensive performance, but nowhere near, painting it maybe kind of the way Mike Tomlin did.
Right. It may have been a step.
Is that fair what I said?
I think it is, but it may have been a step forward, but it's such a small step for this team and not nearly as far as they need to go. And if that's the pace they're on, then it's not going to be good enough. They may get good by week 16 at the pace that they're on, and that's not something that you can win with overall. So I get what Tomlin was saying, but if that's better, it's certainly not good enough.
I mean, it kind of feels like not far from the ceiling. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's just if they got better on possession downs, I mean, then you would see some traction. But whenever you're 30-something %, 33% on the year, and you were 1-19 or 1-9 against the Browns and 4-15 in the opener, you again, as I talked about, you basically had one half against the Patriots, the first half of decent third down play, and that's it. And just to talk about it now, Mason Cole was speaking, I believe it was Monday or Tuesday, and said, well, we just got to get in some more manageable situations. They are in manageable situations. Plenty. They're not in 3rd and 10 plus, 3rd and 8 plus. I mean, the numbers you pointed out yesterday on Twitter, and I'll let you talk about it, are really alarming to this team is in situations where they should be much, much better on third down, and they continue to struggle. And that might be the most alarming stat of them all.
Right. Well, let's wrap up Tomlin because we got a big stat dive, a lot of talk to do here, I think, on third down and kind of the passing game in general there. So kind of shift us gears right back into wrapping up what all Tomlin had to say that was important.
Yeah, that was basically the bulk of it overall. He certainly seemed to doubt the ineligible downfield penalty on on that shovel pass to Jaylen Warren you mentioned. I think it's really close. I think it was the right call to the letter of the law, but I mean, it was, very, very close.
I think it was very close as well too. And did you say that they're making a more concerted, effort to watch that this year?
I had one assistant coach in the NFL say that they're calling that a lot more this year. So that seemed to be the implication. Okay.
How encouraged are you by the run game? Thinks they're making some progress there. What else did he have to say? We covered the Highsmith stuff. He didn't find really too much issue with everybody complaining about Chukwuma Okorafor jumping on Walker. We'll find out on Saturday whether or not that ended up in a fine for him. I don't think he knew he was as injured as he was.
No.
If he's not injured and he does that, is anybody talking about the play?
No, this is such a dumb non-story. It's my terrible take today, so maybe I'm adding more fuel to the fire. But my terrible take, I said it's as if the Browns are acting as if I don't know, Okorafor took off Anthony Walker's helmet and hit him over the head with it. Crazy hypothetical stuff like that. I mean, this is nothing burger. This is what offensive linemen do all the time. It didn't cause the injury. Okorafor didn't know he was hurt. This is just a dumb story that keeps getting kicked up into the air. Let's
quickly tackle the other elephant on, I wouldn't say in the room, on the Twitter machine, I guess, if you will. And that's what I would call irresponsible journalism, to the fact that, look, there are probably players in that locker room that aren't really happy maybe with the way Matt Canada, the play calling and all like that. What do you think about kind of the narrative that's been out there that's already been walked back a little bit? Do you think the locker room is as unhealthy when it comes to the feelings about Matt Canada as it's being or attempted to be painted?
Well, it's a pretty big question. It's hard for me to answer that with too much degree of certainty because we're the outsiders, obviously. I get the sense of a lot of frustration and unhappiness. Is there a mutiny and players want him fired today, the way that the reporting, quote unquote, initially was? That may be a bridge too far, but I've certainly gotten the sense of a lot more comments that have taken more not so veiled shots at the play calling and the coaching overall than what I've seen in the past.
Frustration, right? I mean,
right. And understandably so. They should be frustrated. They're bad.
I mean, look, you see at one point in the All-22 there, George Pickens just, aggravated, coming off the field when he didn't get thrown the football on the other side of the field there. The offense is not performing well, and that's going to cause some frustration. But do you believe it's as bad as it's being made out to be?
It may not be quite as bad as some of the clickbaity tweets and headlines are trying to be, but I don't think it's too terribly far off, to be honest. And if it gets worse, if this team cannot turn things around, then it may be as bad as it sounds or being reported to be, quote unquote, right now. And we both believe that Matt Canada is not going to be back next year, and that's probably for some valid reasons. So I think there's a high level of frustration, not just with the lack of execution, but just the overall schematics and play calling of it all.
Look, if they don't beat the Jets on Sunday, and on top of it, if they don't beat the Jets and have a little bit more offensive production, then all this is going to get magnified, and it's going to continue on with the fire Matt Canada and all. Mike Florio on the radio yesterday saying, I don't think Mike Tomlin would fire Matt Canada, but Art Rooney II might, kind of thing. And I still contend that for people that want Matt Canada gone, I think the best chance of that happen is Matt just taking his ball and going home. Could we maybe see play calling duties diminished or ripped from him or what have you? And if that happens, he should go ahead and leave anyway. If I'm Matt Canada, Matt's in a very uncomfortable. He's already and since day one has been very uncomfortable in front of the media, and doesn't give any info. He says, that's on me. Doesn't want to point fingers at players and all. And it's just going to get louder and more amplified as things go on here. Now, they need to stop asking the same questions. They need to get more specific and try to paint them into a little bit more in a corner. Some of the things maybe we'll talk about here in a little bit here, but it's not good overall. And I still will be surprised if Matt Canada is quote unquote fired, because just the sheer history of this, the Steelers and offensive coordinators, tells you that that's unlikely to happen. But maybe, some of the, if it does get indeed louder and more visible in the locker room with frustration, then maybe you have to look at this thing.
Right. I mean, just putting all the radio DJ noise aside, I can't recall hearing so much clear frustration with the coaching staff, with the play calling, with the OC, the way that I've heard about it with Matt Canada this year, with players talking about not him specifically, but just the overall play calling and scheme. I mean, to me, that raised an eyebrow pretty quickly.
Well, once again, if they don't win on Sunday, winning fixes everything. Well, not everything, but at least it. And look, for those of you wanting Kenny Pickett to start, you better not root for a win, because Mike Tomlin's not going to make a change unless the Steelers win with 5 interceptions from Mitch Trubisky. I still think we're time off from that. It's all put together. The pieces are not fitting together well at all on the offensive side of football.
And even if this team beats the Jets, and hopefully they do, that will calm things. But what happens 3 weeks later?
Sure.
Whenever you play all these other teams, and if you go on a big losing streak, then we're back in the same spot, if not in a worse place in terms of the frustration and the calls for firings and stuff like that. So the long view of the season doesn't look too promising.
Right. And what were your thoughts wrapping up Mike Tomlin on kind of tempo and stuff like that? And some of the things maybe Mason Cole said. And I think our Jonathan Heitritter did something on tempo on a film room as well, too.
Yeah, it's important. It has its useful effectiveness. But, I mean, I get a little tired of the question every single week. Tempo is a component. And they used it in the second half. If you go back and look actually on a per snap basis. They used more no huddle in the second half of that game than they did in the first half. It just wasn't as effective. When your offense can't sustain a drive and get a first down and get something going, it's hard to use tempo effectively, and obviously to keep the rhythm of the drive and the flow of a drive going when you're throwing incompletions or having 1 yard runs on first down and things like that. So, I get the point, and it can be used in moments. It's not something that can be your whole game plan. So you can't be in tempo the entire time. Otherwise, it's not tempo. It's just your normal pace that defenses adjust to. So a little tired of hearing the same question every single week, but certainly it has to be something that's used selectively, but also, make sure that it is used at some point in the game to get this offense going.
Okay. Anything else on Tomlin?
Nope. I think that covers it well.
All right. Let's get into kind of, a hot button with me, and I pretty much you as well too. And I think you wrote yesterday about the Steelers now own the league's second highest 3-and-out rate in the NFL at 33% of the time. That's not good, Bob. You look back. Let's see. The last time this team scored a first quarter touchdown was against Detroit back in last season around week 10. I think as long as Matt Canada has been offensive coordinator, they have 4 first quarter touchdowns, or first half touchdowns. Regardless, the offense is not getting it done, especially early in the games. More specifically here, through 3 games is something I want to touch on. The Steeler offense is, as we mentioned, 13 of 39 on third downs for a 33% rate. That obviously comes on the heels of them converting just 1 of 9 third down opportunities against the Browns. And all that aside, with basically no turnovers by the offense until that wacky end of the play against the Browns there, it's hard just from a stat perspective to not zero in on these third down situations specifically. And as you just, a couple of minutes ago there talked about, it's not like they've been in a lot of unmanageable third down situations so far this season. In fact, they're 6.2 yards to go on average on third downs this season, is 6th best or lowest in the NFL, and that was entering Monday night's week 3 finale there. So the offense is getting in favorable situations on third downs overall. They're just failing to convert them. And in fact, the Steelers have run the most third down plays, 20 of them, between 2 and 5 yards needed for a first down this season. And they've averaged just 1.3 yards on those plays. And that's the worst in the NFL, between 2 and 5 yards needed on third downs this season. The unit has converted just 30% of those 22 and 5 yard needed on third downs. And that's just simply unacceptable. Now, and you would agree, I'm not going to get any pushback on that, right?
No, I'm 100% with you. And again, Mason Cole talks about, we got to get in manageable situations. They're in manageable situations. I mean, the offense is literally designed, those second down rollouts to the flat are designed to get into 3rd and 4, and they're getting those results, but they're not converting on third down.
All right, now here's one thing, and thanks to our shout out Tom Mead, who does a fantastic job charting, makes this thing easy to sort and all like that. Digging deeper into those third down stats, Alex, I found that on 18 total 3rd and 5 or fewer pass attempts, and this is pass attempts only on 3rd and 5 or fewer, Mitch Trubisky is throwing on average 8.28 yards past the sticks.
Okay. So fairly well beyond the sticks.
Right. Now, obviously you're dealing with a small sample size here, but that's to me, that's and nobody likes to see a quarterback consistently throw short of the sticks on third down. Right. But
right.
There's got to be some sort of balance here overall. To further explain this, Trubisky is averaging 10.9 air yards per attempt on third downs that require 5 or fewer yards. Now, look, I understand defenses, trying to play the sticks and stuff like that. But we're talking about the same Mitch Trubisky here, that the further you go down the field with Mitch Trubisky, the less likely he is to. Remember that study that I did back in June or July about, will Mitch Trubisky fix the deep ball concerns, and how concerned, the takeaway was from that Mitch Trubisky 20 yards down the field, we're probably not going to see that big of an improvement from what Ben Roethlisberger is. Well, here, cut to the chase here. We're not, we're not seeing that there. But is it concerning to you? And once again, we're talking about 18, and they're not overly skewed that bad by overly deep passes in general. But to me, this screams, man, this offense needs to maybe try to get a little bit closer to the sticks, or even maybe throw short of the sticks a little bit more, and maybe get a run and catch opportunity, or maybe. And people say, man, he dumps down to Najee too much. Not on third downs, he doesn't enough there. What is your takeaway when I rattle off that on 18 total third and five or fewer pass attempts, that he's throwing on average 8.28 yards past the sticks on average?
Well, I have a couple of thoughts. I think it's interesting. The narrative is that Trubisky throws short too much. The numbers really indicate the opposite, what you're showing here. And the other stat, I think you tweeted it out, that the percentage of 15-plus air yard throws, he's sitting at, I think, 26% of the time, which is one of the higher numbers in football. Now, the completion percentage is really low on that. Right. But the attempts are there. It's basically what's happened to Ben in 2020 and in 2021. To the point about the third downs, I went through all the third manageable pass attempts against the Browns. So not the whole season, but just the Browns game. I believe there were five of them if you take out the one penalty that was offsetting penalties on the play. If you look at the concepts, nothing is schemed open. The first three plays are basically, or two of the first three plays are basically identical. They're just cover one, deep shots with a bender over the middle. The middle one was a rollout to the left where there was traffic and OPI called in that play. Nothing schemed open short. The routes are all pretty independent of each other, and Trubisky really had no choice but to take a couple of deep shots down the sideline there to Deontay on both occasions. And then the second one, could have, maybe should have been caught by Deontay Johnson. So inherently, I have less of a problem with Trubisky's decision and probably more on nothing gets schemed open on those big, important, to use a Tomlin word, weighty possession downs. I mean, I have screen captures of all the route combinations, and just nothing is really schemed open well. So I'm relying on each guy to just win their matchup.
Okay, and look, I'm attaching Mitch Trubisky to this because he's the one throwing the football and he's the one that the stats are. It's not that I'm trying to put all this on Mitch Trubisky, all right? Because we agree that this is multi-layered where the blame goes here overall. And here's something else. The other stat, Trubisky is 1 of 12 when he throws more than 5 yards past the needed chains on third down. So when he throws more than 5 yards past the chains on third and 5, what is it? Let's see. When he throws 5 on any third down, when he throws more than 5 yards past the chains on third downs, he is 1 of 12.
Yeah, an ugly number for sure. I mean, I don't know what that is relative to the rest of the league, but I'm guessing that's still pretty poor overall. Even if completion percentages are probably low across the board, 1 of 12, I'm guessing, is at the bottom. So there's no question.
And I don't have a problem with a quarterback on 3rd and 1 or 3rd and 2 occasionally taking a shot, down the field. But if you're not hitting on these, that's where you start taking issue. And it just seems like scheme, route combination, decision making, whatever. It just seems like there's just too much of throwing too far past the chains on third downs. And this team has, if there's going to be any improvement going forward right now, this team has got to start converting some third downs. And I don't think throwing further down the field is going to be the answer there.
Yeah, I hear that. I just think, and again, I know that you're not explicitly putting all the blame at Trubisky's feet, but I just feel like there's no great go-to call that Pittsburgh has to help get guys open themselves. And I think that's really putting Trubisky in some tough spots.
All right, and kind of playing off of this conversation here, the Steelers' yards after catch so far this season. Najee Harris leads the team with 58 yards after catch. Pat Freiermuth second with 51. Zach Gentry is third on this team in yards after catch with 40. Now, Freiermuth and Gentry, you could almost of those 91 yards after the catch that those two guys have, you can almost boil them down to about 2 plays, right? And wasn't that in week 1, I think?
Well, Gentry had the tight end screen, right? I don't know. Did Freiermuth have a big yak?
Wasn't that trick play or whatnot?
I don't think there wasn't a lot of yak with that.
There wasn't? Okay. Well,
no,
Freiermuth, I'm okay with Freiermuth being up there, but the fact that Zach Gentry is third on your team in yards after catch, really even the more concerning aspect here is your 3 wide receivers, Claypool, Deontay Johnson, and George Pickens, have a combined 19 yards after the catch. That's the part that you circle right there.
How is that even possible? That makes my brain hurt trying to comprehend how that's a number.
Well, when these guys are catching passes, they're doing so in an opportunity with no opportunity to get yards after the catch. And for a coach like Mike Tomlin, and even go back a couple years ago when Kevin Colbert spoke on this, do you remember the onus on them saying today's NFL game, it's a horizontal game now,
Yep.
And remember Randy Fichtner and catch short, run long. All right. There, and this goes back to kind of some of the things that you were just saying there about scheme and route combinations and all like that. They are not getting these guys in situations where they can catch and run the football. You remember what a slant is? Do you know what a slant is? Matt Canada, I don't think, does. And Mitch Trubisky has 3 completions, Alex, between the numbers. And that's a long way there between the numbers. 3 completions between the numbers on air yard passes between 5 and 10 yards down the field. All right, so we already know that there's been a problem with middle of the field past 10 yards. That's no secret. All right, but 3 catches between 5 and 10 yards past the line of scrimmage, and I'm not just talking middle of the field of being 5 yards outside the hash marks in the middle. We're talking from numbers to numbers here, Alex. They have got to start mixing in more slants, more mesh, more
RPOs. Where are the RPOs?
RPOs, bang eights, whatever. Because they have. Here's the overall thing that we need to start seeing more of. Wide receivers catching the ball on the move and not out routes and not vertically down the field pinned towards the sideline type of thing. The only way that this yak is going to go up for these wide receivers is them catching the football on the move, and probably in a fashion that they're working toward the middle of the field.
Generally, whenever you hear a receiver or a group of receivers that have a little yak, it's often, to me, because they're throwing the ball deep and there isn't a lot of run after opportunity, maybe on a deep ball where you're diving out or getting tackled. But that's not the case in Pittsburgh.
Doing. Well, I mean, they're throwing deep.
Well, they are, but what I'm getting to is if you look at the yards per reception numbers, Deontay Johnson at 9 yards, Claypool at 7 yards. Entering this Browns game, they were sitting at 8 and 5.5 yards. So they're catching short and they're not running anywhere, which is a dual problem. If you're gonna have no yak, then you need the 20, 30 yard catch that makes yak a little less necessary. But whenever you're running a bunch of speed outs and out routes, as you mentioned, there really are no yak opportunities. So I think it's a great point overall. there aren't yak opportunities for your really talented skill guys. Deontay Johnson thrives, yards after the catch. I mean, obviously, we don't want him running 100 slants the way that he was last year, but there's got to be a better balance overall to get this guy to make plays post-catch.
Right. Now, I contended before the game against the Browns that we need to see, maybe an uptick in RPOs. I don't think we got that against the Browns there. And in fact, I think if my charting is correct, I think they have 3 RPO passes all season here.
Ben would have that on a drive.
I think most of their RPOs that they have run to date have been runs.
Okay. There was the failed RPO draw against the Patriots. I remember that. That was a mess, which I don't know why Trubisky threw that ball. Just one off the top of my head.
But I think 3 pass attempts out of an RPO play in total, I think.
And that was one of them, right? Is that one counted? Is that one counted? The one to Deontay right side? That was an eligible man downfield, so that might have been actually wiped out. I don't know if that's reflected in your totals or not.
Let me see if I have this here.
That was the Patriots game, week 2, the one that James Daniels got caught on that RPO draw. Deontay right side, 10 feet over his head.
I will tell you the plays here in a moment, at least the targets here in a moment. I got lost.
But certainly fewer RPOs, what you saw last year. Again, that's probably the how rigid this offense is under Matt Canada with a new quarterback installed.
Right. Let's see. Let me situationally. Keep talking, Alex.
Yeah, I can give you weather updates. I'm kind of running out of Steelers stuff, so the eye wall is coming on shore right now in Florida. So, but again, to go back to the lack of RPOs, the lack of yak opportunities, they're not throwing deep effectively. They aren't creating yak opportunities. There is nothing that's working well. If you can't throw deep, you better throw short and get yak. They can't do that either, and so nothing's really working effectively overall. Obviously, given just how stuck in the mud this offense is overall.
All right, I have. Thank you for filler. Is that a filibuster that you just did?
My best Jim Cantori for you right there.
All right, 2 RPO pass attempts against the Patriots. 13:44 left in the second, or in the second quarter on a 2nd and 10. That went incomplete to Deontay Johnson. One other one in the Patriots, also in the second quarter, 6:25 on a 1st and 10. That was a pass to Pat Freiermuth. And the third one was against the Browns, 14:55 to open up the third quarter there, I think. A pass to Deontay Johnson. Was that the one that you were thinking of?
No, the Patriots one. The first one you mentioned, I believe, is the RPO draw that failed. So was that set? So they were, 2 or 3 on RPOs? 2 completions?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. 2. I have them 2 or 3 for 5 yards.
Oh, that's for 5 yards. Is that it?
Yards. With air yards of -5 on those 3 attempts.
Yeah, I mean, these numbers all suck. It's just all bad.
Intended air yards, a total of 1 on those 3. So, I mean, look, at least with an RPO, and look, it's all dictated on what you see and all, right? That's why it's called a run pass option there. But I think you've got to hopefully try to scheme yourself up more for more potential RPO passes, and maybe some more of these quick slants, right? Where you throw into either the first or the second window. Maybe you try to conflict a linebacker, and you're going to have some, probably you're going to have, maybe an inexperienced linebacker on the field for the Jets in this game too. Now they will have CJ Mosley's pretty smart guy there, but the way obviously you help set these RPOs up a little bit better is you run the football more effectively early in the games too, right?
Right. And with the RPO, so you had the weird curl to Deontay, he was covered. The one in the Cleveland game, I think, was a bubble, right, where Deontay's backwards, so it's not going forward. And the third one, the Freiermuth, I can't quite remember what that looked like, but no RPOs where you're getting guys, they're hitting them in stride as they're moving at speed.
Right.
It's all this short stuff that really does not even present an opportunity for great yak. And so that's just as concerning as the lack of RPOs themselves.
So look, I think our general consensus here in third down and overall offense and yak and everything overall, this needs to be a shorter, crisper passing game, I think, with the onus, on a lot of these plays of getting a wide receiver, getting the ball in your playmaker's hands on the move. Now, look, some of these flare outs to Warren and maybe Najee, don't be afraid, to use these backs out of the backfield. And this is the world's worst screen, running back screen team. And I think we both agree we're done with seeing some shovel passes here. That's going to be the key, I think, to getting more yak and maybe converting some of these third downs.
Right. I think things have to be, and maybe I'll send you the screenshots. Maybe I'll post them. I was trying to think of just overall takeaways and conclusions of just the overall snapshots of the third down calls in that Browns game. It just felt like nothing was really schemed open. The first three plays, they were the same exact empty sets every single time, and pretty similar, route concepts overall. So, but bottom line is, you better get better on third down, especially in manageable situations, because without that, your offense has no chance.
Even if you're throwing these outs and these comebacks and curls, the opportunity for you to turn that into an explosive play is not very good with the after the catch thing. And you can look at the passing charts, you look at the outside, the number usage and all like that. When they are completing passes, those are what they're completing, right? They're completing the out routes, the comebacks, the curls, and let's try to throw it over their heads outside the numbers a couple of times. And George Pickens has got to be down there somewhere.
Right. It doesn't work as well as it did for Burrow and Chase last year. And I'm not necessarily that mad at it because it's been overall effective, but I got to count the number of times they've run that half roll, speed out, or last week against the Browns, it was the half roll to a curl route. I mean, they've had to have run that play 12 times this year, literally. Okay. And usually that comes on second and long to try to get into third manageable. And overall, it has been effective, but I mean, they have run that half roll boot, whatever you want to call it, number 2 on a speed out or number 1 on a curl, maybe 12, 15 times already this year, which is just an absurdly high number.
I mean, the Browns had something like 100 yards after the catch in that game the other night.
Amari Cooper had probably a lot of that, and he would have had more had he not set that out of bounds on that one.
And I don't care who gets it, but I don't care if it all comes from one person, but here we are, and what did I tell you the numbers were once again?
19 yards a yak for the top 3 receivers.
Yeah, and hold on here, and I'll tell you league wide, where obviously it's not great, Bob.
I think only the Bears are worse. Giants, maybe. I think the stat you mentioned was.
And the Giants data from Monday night wasn't in yet.
Okay, so they're probably ahead.
The Steelers to date have 183 yards after the catch. And only the Giants, 167, not counting Monday night, and the Bears, 151, have fewer.
I'm going to guess the Giants are probably ahead of Pittsburgh at this point.
Probably now, because that was only 16 yards behind, right?
Right. And so basically, they are 31st, we assume, ahead of the Bears, who are completing 40% of the passes or something terrible like that.
And we're already talking about an offense that isn't going to probably get schematically much better overall. And if they don't increase this yak in offense, it's going to make for some long games.
Right. And if they don't get better on third down, it's going to create for long games. And those things go hand in hand, obviously. But I mean, it's a shock this team is only 24th in third down offense, because it feels like they're the worst third down offense in football. Right.
And they, once again, I feel like we should see, not only, more RPOs, but some that, hopefully will lead to the ball coming out of the quarterback. 3 RPO pass attempts. I mean, I know some teams either they use the RPOs or they don't. So you're probably going to have a huge gap in there between some teams, and probably some teams that probably don't throw RPOs, that much. But
right. And they could have run out of those. So we don't know the exact number.
Sure.
But it's not high. It's not like they're running 30 RPOs and only 3 of them are passing.
Right. It's there's not a lot of context overall there, but 3 in 3 games.
Sure. No, I'm with you 100%. I just think there's got to be more spacing concepts, more ways to scheme guys open, more, triangle, half field based reads for Trubisky. There's got to be more ways to scheme these guys open. There's talent there, but when talent and scheme comes together, that's when you become really effective, not relying solely on scheme and no talent, not relying solely on talent and little scheme. And there's got to be a balance. This team is not striking.
I mean, if they're doing anything, they're throwing deep too much. I mean, and this is a team now too that has 8 explosive plays. 8.
And where does that rank around the league?
There's like
low?
there are only 3, 4, 5 teams I think that have fewer explosive plays than the Steelers. So, and that's one thing we talked about going into this season. How are they going to, after last season, how are they going to create explosive plays this year? I'm gonna ruffle some feathers here, but I'd like to see Jaylen Warren on the field a little bit more, even.
Yeah, he's run well.
That's the guy that's going to most likely produce you an explosive play out of the backfield there.
The overall point to get at, and Chase Claypool, I believe, was asked about it yesterday and said the obvious, what is the identity of the Steelers offense? I don't know. I have no idea, Dave, what this identity of the Steelers offense is other than bad, which is not the identity that you want to carry. I don't know how they win. I don't know what their strategy is. It's a lot of loose stuff that they're trying to cobble together. And we want to run the football, but we want to be able to move the pocket. We want to be able to create big plays. It's all the ideals of what every offense wants to do. But true and blue, brass tacks, how does this offense win? What is their identity that they can build around? They don't have one right now.
Well, when you come out, you go back during the offseason, Art Rooney says, we got to be able to run the football. And really the last 2 years, okay? That should be with the quarterback and Mitch Trubisky and one behind them that's very obviously a rookie and Kenny Pickett whenever that time comes. And as we said, the onus, they messed this thing up the last 2 years because they're still not in a position where what's the Browns' identity, Alex?
I mean, it's their run game, inside zone, paired with their gap, pin and pull scheme, and build play action off of it. That's in a nutshell their identity.
Right, and be able to hit some of these guys on the move or in Joku and in zone situations, right? And they're fine with that because they know they can move the chains and they know they can wear you down like that.
Right.
Until the Steelers come out in the start of games and are able to have the elongated running game of catch short, run long, or actually running the football, this offense isn't going to do anything.
Right. But it goes back to, you have to go to who are we as the Pittsburgh Steelers offense? What do we do well? What are our intentions? Who do we want to be before anything else comes up? You got to figure out what's our personnel and who we are. And I don't think there are good answers to any of those questions. There's no answers
to that. It's a play-by-play basis.
Exactly. And until you get to that point, then everything's just a cobbled mess of just trying step-by-step, play-by-play, trying to figure it out as you go without that solid foundation of this is who we are, this is what we can do, this is the style of play that should work best for us. And until you lay that groundwork, everything else is just going to be inconsistent at best.
It doesn't even feel like the scripted plays coming out in the first 15 plays in this thing is even structured to be on a fact-finding mission. It feels like, let's go get 4 yards up the middle, guys. And not converting third downs, right? They do probably need to, especially at home, they need to probably run more up tempo throughout games and try to catch the opponents in either big bodies or small bodies and work against that. But until they get more yak and able to run the football, unless magically Mitch Trubisky is going to start completing passes more than 16 yards down the field, get ready for more of what you've seen. And even when Kenny Pickett gets in there, to be honest with you, unless they allow him to start hitting some wide receivers on the move or they get that running game going.
Well, you think the offense is structured now. Wait till a rookie gets in there, and then Matt Canada is going to batten down the hatches even more. So I would expect that. But the bottom line, my overall thought is this offense is playing for third and manageable, third and short. They're getting to that point, but they're failing at getting that third down conversion. And until that last component is fixed, then this offense is going to go nowhere.
Right. I mean, they can't even run a wide receiver screen or anything like that. You know, they don't have manufactured running game on top of everything else. A lot of independent routes. You know,
right?
Are they? Now, here's the thing, and that might help at some point, but it's still going to be weeks away, even if he were to be back on the field in week 5. With Calvin Austin. At least that's a guy you can get moving maybe on some of those quick slants, get the football in his hands. But you got a guy in Deontay Johnson that
right.
that you can get the football in the hands.
And they're not doing that. And they're going to do with Austin and not Deontay.
Right,
no,
right.
No.
And it's going to take whenever he does get back moving again, it's going to take him. They're not going to throw him out there for 30 snaps a game.
No, if he's even active at all at this point,
right.
He may be inactive. I mean, he's missed. He's going to miss 2 months of action by the time he actually probably comes back, or 6 weeks of action. And for that guy to jump in and take a hat from who? Boykin? Gunner? No. Who's he getting a hat from?
He ain't getting it from Boykin, I'll tell you.
Right. I got a video coming out tomorrow on Boykin, great special teams play, and Gunner's your return guy, and Pickens and Claypool and Johnson. I mean, unless you're going to, have 6 receivers active, then Austin has no path. And then just the path to get a hat, much less seeing any sort of consistent playing time.
They ought to concentrate on as I think that they should on more RPOs in here, especially if Matt Canada is not going to give Mitch Trubisky more autonomy when it comes to checking out of stuff at the line of scrimmage. That's sinful in and of itself with a quarterback like Mitch at this point. Especially a team that's not going to run a lot of passing RPOs, it seems right now. Second, the ball needs to go through Freiermuth and Deontay more.
Mm-hmm.
More concerted effort to get those guys the football early and often. And I understand, that schematically with Freiermuth in some situations and having to chip. But I mean, for him to have a first target with 8 or 12 minutes or whatever it was in the fourth quarter, that's criminal.
Yeah, but I mean, they did minimize that Browns pass rush. So at least that mission was accomplished, I feel like.
Well, if you get the ball out quick, you can minimize the pass rush that way too. And Mitch not holding on to the ball as long as he's holding out. And another thing, Mitch is not giving. Mitch will bail from that pocket very quickly too. That's another thing that's inherently wrong with this thing. He is not a guy that's going to step up into many pockets.
Right.
He doesn't trust it.
He has a bad habit of leaving pockets and drifting and creating more pressure. Again, through the first 3 games, I have not charged the Steelers offensive line for a single sack. Of the 5 they've allowed, I believe it's 2.5 on Trubisky, 1.5 on Canada, and last week's on Najee Harris. So the issues, the small issues they've had in pass pro have not been, generally speaking, offensive line related, at least in terms of sacks.
Then get the damn ball out quick.
Yeah, I get that.
In the story.
Although if they go back to that, then we go back to the narrative of Trubisky won't take deep shots and he's playing dink and dunk offense, and it's.
Well, he can't hit the deep shots holding on to the football.
Right. Yeah, no, I get it. I mean, the offense is broken. Obviously,
it is.
That's just the overall point.
And I think that we both, agree that that's one of the, at least one of the many reasons why Matt Canada won't be back. The question now, obviously, and people say, well, we'll get rid of Canada. Okay, well, how much better is Mike Sullivan going to be with the same playbook? And how many more changes, how much more stuff can a team implement on a week-to-week basis and focus in on that hasn't, at this point of the season?
Yeah, I mean, mid-season stuff is tough to do, but I still think you can have more ideas, and I think this offense just feels so limited. I mean, they're just running the same stuff over and over, and it's not even dressed up that differently. It's a lot of the same looks and personnel and formations, and they have to be the easiest offense overall to scout. So obviously you're not going to be able to have a 180-degree change in the offense and the structure, but I feel like there's probably a lot of meat on the bone this offense from a schematic standpoint is leaving on the field.
Okay, we beat them up pretty good on that side of the football field, right?
Yeah, I think so. Anything defensively? Any other commentary since we talked about the offense so much?
Just got to get more gap sound, and pressure solves everything, in my opinion, when it comes to the passing game. Once again, it's to me, and I haven't gone deep into the Jets tape yet, and it's obviously Wednesday, and we will these next 48 hours here. But I mean, this really sets up favorable, I think, for the Steelers defense in this game. With Zach, especially if Zach Wilson comes back, the timing, and they've had problems on offense as well too. I don't think they know really who they are offensively at this point either. So this is a good get right week, as we stated, when it comes to the Steelers defense. And if they stay gap sound, and the missed tackles are brought back into reign there, I don't expect the Jets to put up a lot of points in this game unless there's a bust or something.
Right. All right. Speaking of the Jets, let's take a pause here and talk to Andy Vasquez, who writes for StarLedgerNJ.com, New Jersey Advanced Media. You can follow him on Twitter at Andy Vasquez. Been covering the Jets for a long time. We'll take a break here and come back with Andy to talk about the state of the New York Jets.
Okay, welcome back to the Terrible Podcast. It is Wednesday. It is week 4 of the NFL season. The Pittsburgh Steelers will be hosting the New York Jets on Sunday at Acrisure Stadium. And we are pleased to have back on the show. It's been since 2019 was the last time we had him on the show previewing the New York Jets. We're talking about Andy Vasquez. Andy covers the Jets for New Jersey Advanced Media, the Star Ledger, and NJ.com. You can follow Andy on the Twitter machine at Andy_Vasquez. That's VASQUEZ. Andy, welcome back to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.
Thanks for having me, guys. Looking forward to coming to Pittsburgh this weekend and seeing a great atmosphere for football. It should be an interesting game, that's for sure.
Absolutely, it should be. 2-1-2 teams, week 4 of the season. You don't generally like to talk about must-win games this early in the season, but it certainly does kind of feel like this for both teams right now at this point. And Andy, obviously the bigger story this week is will or will not Zach Wilson be back at quarterback for the Jets this week? Robert Saleh kind of left open if Zach gets the clearance that he's going to be the guy, and that's kind of been the assumption I think everybody's been working under, is that indeed Zach will be back. But nothing's definite this week, and I would imagine Robert's going to probably play this thing out and a little gamemanship maybe, and make the Steelers prepare for both Wilson and Joe Flacco. What's your latest view on who will be the quarterback for the New York Jets on Sunday?
Yeah, well, we should get some more information from Robert Saleh on Wednesday. We're recording this early Wednesday morning. Saleh is expected to give an update on Zach Wilson at his press conference later Wednesday morning. I would expect, like you said, for him kind of to keep it up in the air until Friday, but I would also expect Zach Wilson to be the starting quarterback. The Jets have said before that they're not going to wait for the perfect situation to get him out there. He's the future. They need him on the field. And Robert Saleh even said at one point that you just got to rip the Band-Aid off. So the Jets will be without both of their starting left tackles. Actually, they had 3 starting left tackles now on injured reserve, with George Fant going on injured reserve on Tuesday. It's not an ideal situation for the Jets, but if Zach Wilson is healthy, which by all indications he's healthy enough to play, he's going to play on Sunday, and I expect that to be the case. And it's going to be interesting because it's going to be more than 7 weeks since he last saw live action. He missed out on those valuable reps at the end of training camp. Or not the end of training camp, most of training camp, and obviously missed the final 3 preseason games because he got hurt on the second drive of the first preseason game. He's going to be shaking off rust. He's going to not have that valuable, time out on the field to get accustomed to what he's trying to do in year 2 of this offense. So I would expect to see a little bit of rough going for Zach Wilson and the offense, at least early in the game on Sunday against the Steelers.
Yeah, something you hit on it there, something we've been tracking here, and they have had their hands full with the tackle situation and injuries there, and now they're down to, I think it's Connor McDermott's going to get the start there, who came in at the end of the game against the Bengals and looked like a little bit of a rough going for him, and they signed I think Cedric Bouye off the practice squad of the Houston Texans. I would imagine he'd be the swing tackle there. What's your thoughts, Andy, on the Jets offense as a whole through 3 weeks here? Obviously, with Joe Flacco at quarterback, they had that comeback win against the Browns a couple of weeks ago. But what's been your overarching thoughts on the offense?
Well, it's been extremely up and down. Like you talked about at the end of last game when McDermott came in, I think he played 27 pass protection snaps, gave up 5 pressures and 2 sacks and a quarterback hit. So that's not good. In fact, it's kind of scary, and the Jets are going to be very lucky that TJ Watt isn't out there, because it might have been, a 5 or 6 sack game for him if he was. But it's still going to be an issue, and that's really kind of been the issue. We saw week 1 a team that could not protect Joe Flacco, and it was an ugly, ugly day for him. Week 2, they protected him much better, and the Jets offense was able to do some things, especially at the end of the game there, with a pretty spectacular 2-drive series where they drove the length of the field twice in the final 2 minutes to win that game. And then last week, it was more of the same, where they had a hard time protecting Flacco. He didn't play well, and they missed a ton of opportunities, and the offense didn't look very good. It's going to be key for the Jets to establish the run early, and honestly, key for the defense to not let them get behind early, because I believe through 3 games, the Jets have thrown more than any other team in the NFL, which is not what this offense wants to be. But they haven't had a choice, because they've been down in all 3 of these games big at some point, and they were very lucky to get out of week 2 with a win. I mean, that goes without saying, the first team in 21 plus years to come back from 13 or more down in the final 2 minutes. So it's been inconsistent, kind of like we've seen from all phases here in the first 3 games. But it's really going to hinge on how well they can protect, Zach Wilson back there. And Zach Wilson is more elusive than Joe Flacco, which will help. But also he's coming off this injury and has been hurt now twice, scrambling early in his career. So it's not an ideal situation for an offense that is still trying to find its footing and has done some nice things and has some potential, but still has not been able to put it all together.
Andy, to stick with Zach Wilson, I know he didn't play much this summer because of the injuries you mentioned, but just generally speaking, what are the biggest areas of improvement he needs to show in year number 2, from that tough rookie year to this year? Where does he need to make that jump?
Well, at the end of last season, he suffered the injury and came back and played, I believe, the final 6 games of the season. He did not throw an interception in the final 5 games. And early in his career, before his injury last year, decision-making was a real issue. He threw a bunch of interceptions, a bunch of ill-advised passes. He eliminated that late in the season without throwing an interception in those final 5 games, but we didn't see the production there. I don't think he threw for more than 235 yards in that final 5-game stretch. And he was lucky to get over 200 yards in several of those games. He needs to marry kind of that decision-making with being able to also move the ball. That's the biggest thing. We have not seen production and good decision-making, maybe in 1 or 2 games early in his career. And the potential is there. I mean, I know the last time we talked, we were talking about Sam Darnold in his second year, and he was the Steelers were playing the Jets at the end of the season, and Sam was making progress and kind of starting to show some things, but we haven't seen that yet from Zach Wilson. And obviously this is a tough situation for him to show that. The arm talent is there. It is really impressive when he puts it all together, but we haven't seen enough of it. And it's going to be, how well does he understand the offense? Is he getting the balls to the right guys quickly enough? And can he actually rack up some yards and make some plays that can put the Jets in a position to win? We have not seen him do that yet. And that's really the main thing that he needs to show, is that he can make plays, the kind of big plays that this offense needs to be able to win games.
As you mentioned, the Jets are going to need to rely and hopefully establish a ground game more than they have the first 3 weeks. Got a couple of talented backs in Michael Carter and Breece Hall. Are there any specific roles each guy occupies, or is it truly a 50-50, every other series type split?
It's an interesting split. I would say if you look at the reps, it's pretty close to 50-50. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but I know they both played about 22 snaps last week. You see an offense that basically they like to ride the hot hand. So a lot of that is based on feel and which guys kind of get in the matchups they like. Both of these guys can catch the ball out of the backfield and have been successful doing that. With Breece Hall, he's pretty elusive, but he's more of a speed / power guy, a guy who is already showing an ability to see the hole and hit it hard and quickly. But he's still kind of adjusting to the difference between what he saw at Iowa State and what he's seeing in the NFL, where plays that would be a huge play in college, it kind of closes up quickly. And so I think he's been caught by surprise a couple times with being caught, but there's definitely talent there. And I mean, the Jets have averaged something around, 6 yards a carry in the first half this year. Mm-hmm. It's been that they've struggled after halftime to stay in these games and had to kind of get away from the run in these AFC North games where you're not getting a lot of possessions in the third quarter. And if you go 3 and out, by the time you get the ball back, you may not have the chance to run the ball. So that's kind of been where it's at. And then you got Michael Carter, who he's more of an elusive guy. He makes just about everybody miss on the first attempt to hit him. And it's about him kind of establishing a little bit more consistency after that. But, it's there for this offense if they can actually commit to the run and stay in the game early. They just haven't been able to do that yet. And that's kind of going to be the challenge for them on Sunday in Pittsburgh.
If you can talk about Garrett Wilson and his development, obviously a talented first round receiver. He got popped pretty good in that game against the Bengals. And man, when he went down and left, I kind of wondered, man, is he going to be, is this going to be over a carryover injury here? But he ended up coming back in that game. I guess it was a rib injury of some sort. I would imagine he'll probably show up on the injury report, but probably play against the Steelers on Sunday there. Talk a little bit about his development.
Yeah, I've been covering this team for 7 years, and having a weapon or a receiver who can get open consistently is not a thing that I've seen until the first 3 games of this season with Garrett Wilson. I mean, Elijah Moore did it a little bit last year, but this kid can kind of do it all. He's super athletic, super fast, super elusive, and it works after the catch, but also especially before the catch. And we saw it late in that Cleveland game where they didn't have an answer. The Jets offense basically at the end of that game was to get the ball to Garrett Wilson. The Browns knew it, the Jets knew it, and they couldn't stop him, which is pretty impressive to see from a rookie in his second career game. Now the injuries thing has been a concern. He also left the Browns game briefly after taking a hard hit. It was more like he got so high up in the air and fell so hard that on his hip that's how he hurt himself in that game. Obviously took the big hit last week against the Bengals, but he's come back both times. Last week he didn't show up on the injury report. It'll be interesting later Wednesday to see if he does. But yeah, I would expect him to play, and I think he's going to be a problem just because the way that he can get up and catch the ball, the way that he gets open. This kid looks every bit of the real deal, and even last week, in a game where it didn't feel like he had that big of an impact, he still had 6 catches, I believe, for 60 yards. So he is going to make an impact on this game, and he's going to be the focal point for this offense. And I think that's going to be the case all season long.
Flipping over to the other side of football, you look at the 2 guys in the middle there in Quinnen Williams and Sheldon Rankins. Obviously know a lot about those 2 guys, and Carl Lawson on the edge over there is one of I think one of Alex's favorites as well too. That long arm though that Carl Lawson has off the edge is something, but he's obviously dealt with some injuries in his career. Where is Carl Lawson at now? Is this is he still trying to get himself back to kind of where he was? And I guess the other player I'd like to know about it that went down in that game against the Bengals is Quincy Williams there. That'd be a pretty big loss if they don't have him. And I think it's an ankle injury and maybe not as severe as first thought, but sounds like he might be questionable this week.
Yeah, I would be surprised if Quincy Williams plays just because it is a high ankle sprain. We saw him outside the locker room after the game with a walking boot on that ankle. It looked at the time, I mean, they had the cart out there quickly. They had him in an air cast. That looked like it was going to probably be the end of his season. So it's really good news for the Jets that he'll be back at some point. But yeah, I would be shocked if he plays this weekend. You know how those high ankle sprains work. It's usually you're looking at a month before a guy gets back out on the field. So yeah, that's going to be a loss for the defense. In terms of the pass rush and the defensive line, Quinnen Williams has been very good this season. Some of the Jets fans don't seem to understand how good he is because he's not getting these sacks that they want to see, but defenses are throwing 2 or 3 guys at him every time. There's a reason the Jets have been so good against the run because him and Sheldon do a great job in the middle. The edge rush performance has been disappointing now with Carl Lawson. He's still definitely working his way back from the Achilles. Physically, he seems to be pretty close to 100%, which is very impressive. But he's admitted that mentally, after being out for a year and learning kind of to trust your body once again, and get used to the speed of the game, he's kind of had a ramp up period with that. But if you look at his numbers, his win rate is up there near the top in the NFL. He's getting pressure from the outside. It just hasn't amounted into a lot of sacks for the Jets, who, were really hoping last week to be able to put some heat on Joe Burrow. And they did as the game went on, but only sacked him 2 times. And that was the guy who was sacked 13 times in the first 2 games of the season. So they need to get more pressure on the quarterback from their edge rush. And at this point, John Franklin Myers and Carl Lawson, the primary edge rushers, haven't been able to do it. So that's a big thing to watch for the defense this weekend, because that's going to be a point of emphasis for them, is getting to Trubisky and making life hard on him.
Hey, Pittsburgh and the Jets having that same conversation. Steelers looking for a pass rush to improve without TJ Watt. You mentioned Garrett Wilson. You guys had 3 first-round picks this year, starting with Sauce Gardner. How has he looked? Is he playing aside? Is he manning up against somebody? No, he had a good week last week against Jamar Chase, but overall, what has been Sauce's play? How has that looked the first couple weeks?
Yeah, the Jets are pretty consistently zone heavy on first and second down. So you've seen him playing aside on first and second down. Against the Ravens, he followed Andrews, the tight end, on third down. I'm not 100% sure if he was on Chase every third down last week, but I think he was on a lot of them. And yeah, it wasn't a perfect performance. I know that there was one long pass he gave up to Chase, and there was a miscommunication that probably wasn't on him that led to a touchdown. A miscommunication between him and Quincy Williams that allowed Chase in the third quarter to get wide open in the end zone, which was not what the Jets wanted there. But overall, Sauce has been very impressive in terms of not allowing the big play down the field. Even when he doesn't get his head around on some of those big plays, you can tell he's playing the receiver's eyes and managing not to touch him and break up these passes. He's done it a few times this season, and I think that's really encouraging to see out of a rookie. We haven't seen a penalty that I can remember from Sauce yet. It hasn't been this breakout start, kind of like we've seen from Garrett Wilson, but it's been very, very solid. And when you're not having to mention your starting cornerback much, a rookie who's in his first 3 games, that's a good sign. And that's kind of where we're at with Sauce right now.
Sure. My last question for you, Andy, then I'll let Dave finish things out. This is kind of more just a big picture question, but as somebody that's covered the Jets for a while, does it feel like New York's in this just endless cycle? Tom Brady finally leaves and then Josh Allen emerges and Tua is looking really good. The Patriots still remain competitive. How do the Jets ever try to gain an edge or foothold in this AFC East?
Yeah, well, I think more than anything, it's people aren't concerned right now with the external stuff. Yes, it's frustrating for Jets fans to see, Josh Allen and to see Tua doing what he's doing and these teams to have success. But for the Jets, it's more about what they're not doing and what the things that they're doing wrong, which is they continue to make these crippling mistakes. I don't think anybody right now is upset about the Jets being 1-2. In fact, you could say it's a win in a way, because the Jets hadn't won a game in September since 2018 when Sam Darnold won his first career start before 2 weeks ago. They've been bad in September, but it's the way that they're 1-2. They played a pretty strong game, especially defensively against the Ravens, but they make these crippling mistakes that just kill them. Against the Browns, they were in the game the first 3 quarters. They tied the game early in the fourth quarter, and then they imploded for the first 13 minutes of the fourth quarter to put themselves in a losing position, down 13, heading into the final 2 minutes before, to their credit, getting an opportunity and then doing everything right. And then they had a chance to build on that last week, and they come out and just as an example of what went wrong, on the second or third series of the game at the end of the first quarter, they get a stop on 3rd and 9. John Franklin Myers, though, is flagged for a late hit on Joe Burrow. The drive continues 3 plays later, 56-yard touchdown on a missed tackle. At the end of the game, the Jets are down 13. They have a chance to get, or 15, they have a chance to get back in the game in the first or second minute of the fourth quarter, with, second and 6 on the 14. Corey Davis commits a personal foul for unnecessary roughness after the play. Now it's, 3rd and 29 from the 25 or something like that. I know that doesn't add up, but you get what I'm saying. They put themselves in these horrible positions where you can't come back and win the game. And that's not about them being a young team. Those are 2 veterans making these huge mistakes. And at a certain point, you got to look back on the coaching staff and be like, what is not working here? Something's wrong. And I think that's kind of where this gloom and frustration is about this team right now. It just looks so much like what we've seen over the last couple of years. And how do you sell that as progress? So it's more about the internal battle. And that's what people are upset with right now, is that everybody would be okay with it if this team looked like it was heading in the right direction. But when you see the performance and the way it kind of fell apart against the Bengals last week, it's hard to say it's heading in the right direction. So I think that's what Jets fans are frustrated with, and what they're looking for in terms of progress to see this week is are you going to shoot yourself out of this game, or are you going to make the plays that give yourself a chance to win without needing a miracle at the end? And that's what we haven't seen so far.
Andy, Saturday night, they've announced that Pitt will play Georgia Tech there at Acrisure at 8 p.m. kickoff. Last I looked, maybe some rain in that game. I don't know what they're going to do with the field. Have to turn that around quick. I know they replaced the sod in the middle a few days ago. Don't need to worry about that with the Steelers. They don't use the middle of the field anyway. But could rain around 1 o'clock on Sunday as well too. So could be some interesting field conditions there on top of everything else. Do you expect the ball to come out quick from whoever is at quarterback this week, especially with the tackle situation, and especially if it is Zach Wilson under center? Do you expect maybe a heavy use of RPOs in this one?
I would think so, and I think the Jets are going to try to put Zach Wilson in every position where he doesn't have to be scrambling in his first game back with this knee issue, because that's how he got hurt last year in New England, trying to extend a play that he probably should have ended earlier. That's how he got hurt, believe it or not, in the second drive of the preseason, where he could have just gone out of bounds, but he cut it back upfield and ended up, tweaking his knee and missing the next 7 weeks. So, I think they're going to do whatever they can to get the ball out quickly and not put him in a position where he's having to drop back and then make guys, free rushers miss. And especially if the field's going to be like that, that's even more of a reason to focus on RPOs and generally just getting rid of the ball quickly. So I think you'll see a lot of checkdowns. I think you'll see a lot of RPOs, and I think you'll see a team that tries to establish the run early so they're not putting their quarterback in a vulnerable position.
All right, Andy, it is Wednesday, several days to go until Sunday there, but do you have an early prediction for this? Is this going to be like a 12-9 or 12-10 game, or take the under, or what you got for us here on this Wednesday?
I think it's going to be a close and low-scoring game. I feel like I just have a weird feeling the Jets are going to win. I don't necessarily have logic behind it. I just feel like they have to win this game. They really, really have to win this game. And And I think they're kind of due for one of these games to kind of swing their way and just be this weird 2-2 team at this stage of the season, because that, if anything, things with the Jets get weird. So I would say 17-14 Jets.
All right, fair enough. Andy, look, been a while, 2019. We remembered how good you were, and you did not disappoint this time around, too. So, Andy, look, thanks for taking time and being back on the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.
Thank you, Andy.
Well, thanks for having me, and I'm glad that 3 years of losing and nonsense hasn't worn me down too much, I guess.
And welcome back to the Terrible Podcast. And again, our special thanks to Andy Vasquez. Be sure to follow him on Twitter at Andy Vasquez. Shout him out and tell him that you heard him on the podcast and appreciate his time. Busy life those beat guys lead. And so appreciate him carving out about 20 minutes or so for us. And really good to hear from Andy again, Dave.
All right, yeah, indeed. And coming out of that, looks like the Jets coach Robert Saleh has announced that during his press conference that Zach Wilson has been cleared and will be the Jets quarterback on Sunday against the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Okay, so that seemed to be the way things have been going, but now it's officially confirmed. No games being played by the Jets, and so it's pretty clear that Wilson will be the guy in his first snap since week 1 of the preseason.
I would have, if I'm Robert Saleh, I would have played games with that, to be quite honest with you. I wouldn't have come out on a Wednesday and say, if all goes well in practice, he'll be good to go. I'll say, we'll see. It might be a game time decision with him, that kind of thing. But I'm pretty sure that the Steelers were pretty convinced anyway that this was going to happen. And in fact, this might play more into the Steelers' favor, than veteran Joe Flacco having played against the Steelers all those years and being a little bit more wiser in his ways there. This maybe plays a little bit more in the Steelers' favor. Hope I'm not eating my words there, but
I
know Zach Wilson starting this game instead of Joe Flacco.
All right, we shall see. All right, Dave, anything else you want to talk about? Any other news that you wanted to hit on really quickly?
I think we got most of it there, do we not?
Let me just kind of scroll through. I believe that's basically all the big stuff we wanted to hit on overall. I think so. So let's get to reader emails and close out today's show.
All right. Lee Greenspan writes in, hey, guys, just a quick question for you about a play in the Browns game. With 9:40 left in the third quarter on the Browns 41, Steelers had a 4th and 5. They put out the punt team and took a delay game to get more room for Harvin. If that was Tomlin's plan, why not keep the offense out there and try to draw the Browns offside? And then if it fails, then take a delay game. Even if it doesn't work, they're in the same position. Feels like a wasted opportunity there. The little game management mistakes always get to me because at the pro level, they should never happen. What are your thoughts on that? Should they have at least put the offense out there on that 4th and 5, maybe try to draw them off and then take the delay game?
Wait, is that the end of the game where there was the 12-man penalty?
No, 9:40 left in the third quarter.
I'd have to go back, and it's been almost a week. I can't quite remember the situation there.
I'm having a problem remembering that aspect of it too. I remember the delay game there, but point taken, Lee. We'll just leave it at that. Bryce writes in, since teams are kicking the ball out of bounds so much on kickoffs, do the Steelers need to rethink of bringing in players, Gunnar Olszewski, who are more return specialists than position players? I understand the signing from a punt return perspective, but since most of the time he won't get an opportunity for kickoff returns because the ball getting kicked out of bounds, then it seems the impact would be minimized. Obviously, you want capable return men back there, but that role can be filled by someone who is a little more useful at the primary position. He's based on, and that's first question. Number 2, based on the first 3 games, what are some things defensive from scheme standpoint you've seen that you believe Austin and Tomlin need to adjust to have more success? From that aspect, especially when you don't have TJ Watt on the field, you need to do a better job of scheming up pressure.
Yeah, I think defensively there's been less issues with the overall scheme. I think there's been some popcorn, to use the Tomlin word, when you're on nickel personnel on the goal line against the Patriots week 2, when you were using your over front and the Patriots were killing you weak side to close out that game. The overall need to probably scheme up pressure a bit more and maybe just blitz a little bit more than what they are right now. Not drop Highsmith in the coverage 35% of the time, the way he did against the Browns. So maybe less big picture issues, but some small stuff I think to work on overall. What was the first part of that question?
The whole Gunnar Olszewski and the kickoffs. And here's the thing. Gunnar, the most value with Gunnar is, you for the time that occasionally they do kick it short on kickoffs, well, then you would expect him to get you a 23, 25, 28, 30-yard return out of that. I don't think that's inherently why you brought him in. I think you brought him in more from the punt return aspect of it, and specifically to catch footballs and not put them on the ground like Ray McLeod had been known to do. And obviously he wasn't able to do that, and it turned out to be a huge play in that game against the Patriots there. Gunnar is who he is as a wide receiver, and that's not going to change.
Well, we didn't really know much about him as a receiver because he barely played. He didn't play it in college and was barely used there in New England. I think he showed more as a receiver than I expected this summer. There's some usefulness there in the jet run game. Had an 18-yard run at some point this year, and I think he can play a little bit in that slot position. But it's just good to have a return guy who can do both. It's less about the kick return. It's a guy that can be your kick and punt returner, so you don't have two people doing that, and then increasing the chance that one of those guys gets hurt and you're relying on a backup. So you want somebody who can do both. I think Olszewski has some talent to play more on offense. He just hasn't, played a lot offensively. So I'm fine with the way that it is.
Okay, here's an interesting one from Paul Francis. Long time, first time. Love the podcast and the work. You've made me drastically more informed football viewer and engaged fan. Hey, all right. Given it's an unfortunate start to the year, I have more of a theoretical question for you. In light of oh, Lord, he didn't put phonetic spelling in here. Shohei Ohtani, isn't that
Shohei Ohtani, yes, the baseball player.
Was I close? All right.
Close. Shohei Ohtani.
Okay. I wonder about the value of a highly skilled two-way player in the NFL, forgetting the conditioning fears and concerns around weekly defense and offensive prep being impossible for a single person, and assuming a single player was a top 5 player at both the key offensive and defensive position. How valuable would this player be to a team? He says, how much is freeing up a spot on a 53-man roster worth? Would this player be paid the salary equal to sums of a comparable offensive and defensive player, or would they be paid more because the additional roster flexibility, or less since one player being injured takes out 2 starters? Lastly, do you think we'd ever see such a player? If so, what positions are most likely? And if not, what's the largest limiting factor preventing a two-way player from emerging? He says, y'all are the best, and I eagerly await each podcast to drop. Paul, I think you answered a lot of your own questions there in the setup, first and foremost. Offensive prep and defensive prep being damn near impossible for one single player, assuming a single player was the top 5. Look, you're not going to pay a guy double. I'll tell you that. You're not going to – one guy's value isn't going to go double the position, that end of it. Roster flexibility is nice. In today's NFL, it's so, I'm not saying it won't happen and he also says which position. I think a defensive back would be the most likely guy or player position to be a guy that stands the best chance to play two-way. It's definitely not going to be a lineman. Right. It's unlikely to be, unless you have, a linebacker that occasionally comes in as a tight end and a lead blocker. But even so, you're talking about 3 or 4 plays a game that way. It's more than likely going to be a defensive back that's a great defensive back that's got the speed that maybe can give you 5 or 6 plays offensively. I think the days of the two-way player for more than maybe just a handful of snaps on the opposite side of the football is days of yesteryear.
Yeah, that's 1950 type stuff. That's an interesting question and thought. You really,
I get it's a good question. I understand the question, but I think he answered a lot of his own questions there in the setup, because I mean, how do you get this guy practice reps if you were going to play him 30 or more plays on the opposite side of the primary side of the football, if that makes sense?
No, you're 100% right. There's a rep standpoint. To me, the first thought I had was conditioning. What player is conditioned to play 100 plus snaps a game like that, never getting a break? I mean, that's the first thing that would be incredibly tough to overcome. At the high school level, you see that with smaller. My high school had a bunch of two-way guys because it's just lesser talent and fewer numbers overall. But once you get past the high school level, you don't really see that kind of stuff anymore. If it was going to be somebody to some lesser extent, as you said, Dave, it'd be a receiver playing cornerback. Think about Deion Sanders a little bit. Troy Brown played some safety as well for the Patriots. Devin Hester, kind of went back and forth between receiver and corner, return guy, obviously. So that would be the way it would work if you would make it work. But it's not going to be the way it was in the 50s, where you had guys who were true two-way players, nose guard and offensive tackle or something like that. Just not going to happen anymore.
All right, thanks for the email there. Hunter Higgins writes in, Dave and Alex, what's up? Looking like it might be a rough year. Hopefully we can find a way to eke out at least a few wins. LOL. Anyways, I want to pick your brains about Ahkello Witherspoon's play. I read Alex's tweet with his relatively poor stat line thus far on the year, but I have to say I don't think he's been terrible. I mean, obviously 2 TDs given up and the poor QBR against is very telling, but it just seems to me he hasn't been out of phase much when encouraged. He also has seemed a lot more willing to tackle and showing physicality this year than last year. That play when he was mossed for the touchdown against New England, he was right there, he says. The other guy just made a better play on the ball. Not trying to make excuses for the guy, but I just have a feeling he's going to turn it around in the next few games. Not sure he's a dumpster fire some folks are making him out to be quite yet. Let me know what you think. I don't think he's been a dumpster fire. And look, I mean, and I think we even said after that game against the Patriots, it was a teaching lesson, and I think Ahkello even admitted as much. You can't take for granted that some of these smaller guys might not get up above eye level there. I think Mike Tomlin drove that point home as well too. I'm more concerned, and I think and I've said it several times as well too. One of my concerns when they signed Ahkello is he going to make some business decisions out there with tackling? Well, I have been quite impressed with. Now, he did miss a key one in that game against the Browns, and I think occasionally he's going to do that there. But at least there was somewhat of an attempt in there. But I think top to bottom, he's been better in coming up and making tackles than I thought he would be. My main concern is when you get him running across the field in some one-on-one situations.
Yeah, it's not been where he's, as the reader said, he's not out of phase, but the finish of the play is the whole play, in the sense of you can have great technique and be perfect 95%, but that last 5%, that the actual catch, if you lose that, that's all that ultimately really matters. So he has to finish plays better. I think he has been late reading things. His leverage needs work overall. So I think he's been pretty bad. Can he get better? Sure, he's always been an up and down kind of guy. So maybe he turns things around, obviously dealing with a hamstring injury right now, and that may limit him in some, pretty significant type ways. So I'm not trying to throw in the towel on Witherspoon, but I think his tackling has been fine, but I'll trade some poor tackling for better coverage at this point, because this team needs that number one corner to be able to take on some top flight receivers.
Alex von Rossenberg writes in, Trubisky still deserves some credit. His title is still ready for a change, but Trubisky still deserves some credit for ball security through 3 games last year. Ben had 3 interceptions and 2 fumbles, neither lost. Trubisky has 1 INT and 0 fumbles. Ben had been sacked 8 times, Mitch 5, and had thrown 3 TD passes, Mitch 2. I don't think Mitch has been better, but I don't think he's been worse. Imagine what this thing would look like if Mitch had more turnovers in here. Yeah, look, take your hat off and hand it to him, as Hines Ward like to say when it comes to giving a guy credit. He's been good with the football overall. But within that, as Alex just pointed out, the sacks that this team has taken, how many is on him? 4, 4.5?
2.5 of the 5.
Are on Mitch, or not
on Mitch. Are on Mitch. 2.5 I've charged to Mitch.
I think it's the other stuff out there right now, Alex. Not you, Alex. Alex, the emailer here. When it comes to Trubisky's play overall, yeah, he should be commended. And here's the thing, not turning over the football is something that the Steelers absolutely must do. The way this team is right now.
Right. You don't want to take that for granted because it's easy to kind of miss that point whenever it's not happening. Whenever you turn the ball over 10 times, everyone talks about it. It gets talked about a bit less when it just simply is not happening. So he's played within the structure and the scheme and the ideals of this offense overall well enough. But, you compare that to Ben last year, statistically, is it better in some ways, I guess, but being a little bit better than Ben last year is not the goal of this offense. It's not going to get you where you need to go. So it doesn't mean a whole lot overall. And certainly the only thing that matters is what's your overall offensive production. This offense is averaging 15 points per game offensively, and that is not winning football in 2022.
Right. And look, this isn't just all Trubisky as we, there's enough blame to go around here, several directions and a couple of drops along with it here. So, but predominantly most of it's going to be split between Trubisky and Matt Canada, I think.
Agreed. I think that's where the bulk of the blame will lie in, and that's reasonable.
Troy Papalomatas writes in, how much of this team's lack of overall success is subject to being out-coached? The offensive struggles in the last 5 years or so is obvious due to poor coaching, and how much overall has this team been out-coached? I am a huge fan of Tomlin and do not want to see him coach elsewhere. However, I believe he needs a better approach on fitting scheme to players rather than players to scheme, especially on the offensive side of the ball, maybe even defensively at times as well, too. Look, no playoff win since 2016.
Right. It's been a disappointment.
Frame that however you want to frame. No, I on the flip side, I'm not a. They need to make better. Did they hang on to Keith Butler too long on the defensive side of football? Probably. Was Matt Canada a great choice? Was Randy Fichtner and Matt Canada collectively good choices when it comes to offensive side of football? Doesn't look that way.
Yeah, probably not. In terms of the here and now, have they been? Do you feel like the issues for Pittsburgh being 1 and 2 are more, and it's always a combination, but is it more scheme or personnel execution related through 3 weeks, Dave?
I mean, there's been some plays that should have been made in some games,
right?
For starters, but inherently, as we spent 35 minutes on this show, they're schematically, this thing's not fitting the personnel. And I think you just boil it back down to one of the conversation we had. What is the identity of this offense? Plain and simple. And you cannot answer that question.
Absolutely cannot do that. I would say, to answer my question, and again, it's certainly a combination of both execution, players, coaches, but I think offensively it's been more schematic problems. Defensively, it's been more execution, player problems.
Do you see my stat the other day on explosive runs?
I did not know. Or I'm forgetting it if I did see it.
I hate when let's see other teams get running backs with explosive runs. Dating back to 2017, the Steelers are last in the NFL in double explosive runs. Now, a double explosive run is 40 yards or longer. Dating back to 2017, the Steelers are last in the NFL in double explosive runs with 3. One of those I know was you can probably rattle them off here. Trey Edmonds, James Conner
against the Broncos,
and Ray McLeod.
Run. Is that against the Eagles? I want to say
would be correct, sir. There's so few you've been able to
remember them.
You can remember them. How often does a train come by? So often you don't even notice. Right. The Steelers have had just 3 double explosive runs since 10-16. So 3 even dating back to double explosive runs. You remember who that one was? 10-16-16?
It was a double explosive run in 2016.
Yes.
Was that? I'm going to guess here, Darius Hayward-Bay.
You would be correct, sir. I'm proud of you. I'm
Thank
so
you.
proud
Thank
of you.
They're so easy to remember.
Let's see. And the Steelers have managed just 8 explosive plays of 20 yards or more in 3 games, and only the Giants have fewer, 7.
And by running backs, Pittsburgh has 2, and one of them is Trey Edmonds.
What does that tell you?
So not great.
And the James Conner one was kind of a run out the clock.
It was the end of the game. Yeah.
In a game situation there. We shouldn't be able to, even as good as we are, we're damn good, Alex. We shouldn't be able to remember them that easy.
All right. And again, in the stat that I had that I tweeted out yesterday, I think I made mention of on Monday, was over the last 27 games, regular season games, Pittsburgh has scored 30 plus points once. And that was the loss last year to the Chargers. So the one time they did it, they didn't even win that game. And that is tied for the second fewest amount of games in football. Only the Giants, who have not done it at all over that span, are worse. They're tied with Jacksonville and Carolina. So again, you can't score points.
Man, we've been full of doom and gloom in this 5. Probably not many people listening to the end of the show here. Let's take one more here from Mike Nickel. Writes in, "Hey guy," and it says, "The Steelers stink. Appreciate all you do for create quality content, especially when watching and rewatching this team is probably a painful exercise. And to the point, it's going to be a long season. It's another year of putrid offensive football. The quarterback still isn't a game changer. The running back is still too slow. The offensive line technically improved, so they're not dead last, and the guy calling the play still doesn't have a clue. The defense still relies way too much on one guy, even though they have the most expensive unit in the league. They still don't do a very good job stopping a run. They still can't figure out how to match up against empty formations. This is still after hiring a new DC and another defensive whiz in Flores. The one constant, of course, is Mike Tomlin. I've given up on him being removed at any point since the Steelers head coaches have job security of a pope. The only thing we can hope for is that Pickett is a franchise quarterback and Omar Khan kills every draft and loads up the roster with so much elite talent that not even Tomlin can manage to screw it up. And you can miss me with the never had a losing season argument. That stat is as overrated as Tomlin is, and any season where they're not winning in the playoffs is indeed a losing season. My prediction for the season was 7-10, he says, but that seems optimistic now. Sorry for the long form email of nothing else. This is cathartic. Time to fire up Madden and fire Tomlin again, he says.
All right. Well, there you go. Don't have a lot to add, but I'm glad you feel better now.
All right. Anything else breaking here late, Alex, before we turn this thing off?
Well, speaking of video games, my Pittsburgh Pirates and my baseball game, they're doing all right. They're doing better. They're holding their own right now. But no, that's all I got.
Okay. Shout out to Andy Vasquez for joining us again. Make sure to follow him on Twitter and read his work online. Alex and I'll be back at this thing again on Friday, giving you a fuller breakdown of the game against the Jets on Sunday. What else do we? I think that's about got it. Please be checking out SteelersDepot.com. In the meantime, we're putting up 30 posts a day in there. If it moves, we're writing about it. Film rooms, everything under the sun there. Also, Alex's terrible take will come up later on this afternoon as well, too. He already gave you a preview about what that's about. So in the meantime, follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex on Twitter at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate to the cause, SteelersDepot.com, hit the donate button. Also, an ad-free version of the site can be found at SteelersDepot.com. Hit the ad-free button, upright navigational bar that way. Alex, good job today. Talked about a lot of intricacies on offense. I think that was fun. And until Friday, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.